1 second, one choice, or says one explosion that changed everything. Tonight, you'll witness how a single moment of instinct can ignite a war, shatter an ordinary life, and force a woman to choose between survival and surrender. This is the story of Aria Bennett, a waitress who saved the wrong man's life and became a target herself. Before we begin, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let the chaos unfold. The rain came down in sheets that night, turning Manhattan's streets into rivers of neon and shadow. It was the kind of rain that soaked through cheap uniforms and seeped into worn-out shoes, the kind that made every step home feel twice as long. Aria Bennett stood under the flickering awning of Marcello's bistro, pulling her jacket tighter against the cold November wind. Her shift had ended 20 minutes ago, but she'd stayed behind to help Marco, the dishwasher, carry out the trash. He had a bad back. Someone had to help. "You're too nice for this city, Aria," Marco had told her, shaking his head as he hobbled back inside. "One day that's going to bite you." She'd laughed it off. Kindness wasn't a liability. It was the only thing that kept her human in a place that tried every day to grind her down. Now, standing alone on the sidewalk, Aria felt the exhaustion settle deep into her bones. 27 years old, and she felt 50. 2 jobs, 3 unpaid bills sitting on her kitchen counter, a landlord who'd started leaving eviction notices under her door. This was survival, not living. But she'd survived worse. She adjusted the strap of her worn messenger bag and stepped out into the rain, heading toward the subway station 6 blocks away. The streets were nearly empty at this hour, just past midnight, save for the occasional taxi splashing through puddles and the distant wail of a siren. New York never truly slept, but it did slow down, just enough for people like her to catch their breath. Aria was halfway down the block when she heard it, the low rumble of an expensive engine. She glanced over her shoulder and saw the car, a black Mercedes S-Class, sleek and predatory, gliding to a stop in front of Marcello's, the kind of car that didn't belong in this neighborhood. Too clean, too expensive, too deliberate. A man emerged from the restaurant's side entrance. Even from a distance, Aria could tell he was different. He moved with the kind of controlled grace that came from power, from certainty. His suit was impeccable, charcoal gray, tailored to perfection, the kind that cost more than her annual rent. Dark hair, sharp features, an aura that demanded attention without asking for it. He was on his phone, his expression unreadable as he spoke in clipped, authoritative tones. Aria should have kept walking, should have minded her own business, caught her train, gone home to her cramped studio apartment in Queens, should have stayed invisible. But something stopped her. A detail. A wrong note in an otherwise perfect composition. The driver had stepped out to open the rear door for the man in the suit. Nothing unusual about that, except the driver's movements were stiff, mechanical. His eyes darted toward the street, then back to the car, then to the man. Nervous. Too nervous for a simple pickup. And then Aria saw it. A wire. Thin. Almost invisible in the rain and darkness. But it caught the light from a street lamp for just a fraction of a second as the driver opened the door. A wire running from beneath the car's chassis, disappearing into the wheel well. Her breath caught. Time slowed. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to look away, to pretend she hadn't seen anything. But her body moved before her mind could catch up. She was running, sprinting toward the man in the suit. "Stop!" Her voice tore through the rain, raw and desperate. The man turned, his dark eyes locking onto hers with surprise, then annoyance. The driver's hand moved toward his jacket, but Aria didn't stop. She closed the distance in seconds, her sneakers slapping against wet pavement, and without thinking, without hesitating, she grabbed the man's arm and yanked him backward with every ounce of strength she had. "Get back! Get back!" He stumbled, his phone clattering to the ground. The driver shouted something, a warning, a curse, she couldn't tell, and then the world exploded. The fireball erupted from the car with a deafening roar, a shockwave of heat and force that threw Aria off her feet. She hit the ground hard, her shoulders slamming into concrete, her ears ringing with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. Debris rained down, twisted metal, shattered glass, burning fragments of what had been a luxury vehicle seconds ago. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world was spinning, a kaleidoscope of fire and smoke and chaos. Strong hands gripped her arms, hauling her to her feet. She blinked through the haze and found herself staring into the face of the man she'd just saved. Up close, he was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, eyes the color of midnight that burned with an intensity that made her want to look away. But she couldn't. Those eyes held her captive. "Are you hurt?" His voice was low, controlled, but there was an edge to it, a razor-sharp focus cutting through the chaos. Arya shook her head, even though she wasn't sure if that was true. Her shoulder throbbed, her ears still rang, but she was alive. "Who are you?" he demanded. I'm nobody. I just—" Her voice cracked. "There was a wire. Under the car. I saw— Luca!" Another man appeared through the smoke, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit that was now streaked with ash. He had a gun in his hand, his eyes scanning the street with predatory alertness. "We need to move. Now!" The man, Luca, didn't release Arya's arm. Instead, he pulled her closer, his gaze never leaving her face. "She saw it before I did. She saved my life." The other man's eyes flicked to Arya, then back to Luca. "Then she's coming with us." "What?" "No, I need to go home." "Not an option." The second man's tone left no room for argument. "If they see you, if they know you interfered, you're already dead." Arya's blood turned to ice. "Dead? What are you— Who are you people?" Luca's grip tightened, but not painfully. "Someone just tried to kill me, and you stopped them. That makes you either very brave or very foolish." His eyes narrowed. "Either way, you're not safe anymore." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The fire from the destroyed Mercedes cast dancing shadows across the street, painting everything in shades of orange and red. People were starting to emerge from nearby buildings, drawn by the explosion. Phones were out, recording. "Move!" The second man gestured toward a black SUV that had pulled up behind them, seemingly out of nowhere. "Marco, get her in the car. Now!" "I'm not going anywhere with you!" Arya tried to pull away, but Luca's hold was firm. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Listen to me very carefully. In approximately 30 seconds, the people who planted that bomb are going to realize it failed. They will see the footage, they will see you, and they will come for you." His eyes bored into hers. "I'm offering you a chance to survive this night. Take it." The weight of his words crashed over her. This wasn't a suggestion. This was a lifeline, and possibly the only one she'd get. Arya's knees felt weak. Her whole life she'd been careful, invisible. She paid her bills, kept her head down, never caused trouble. And now, because of one impulsive decision, everything had changed. "Please." The word came out barely above a whisper. Something flickered in Luca's eyes, understanding perhaps, or recognition. He released her arm but kept his hand extended, palm up. An offer, a choice. "Trust me." Arya looked at his hand, then at the burning wreckage, then at the growing crowd and the approaching sirens. Every logical part of her brain screamed to run, to find a cop, to go home and pretend this never happened. But deep down, she knew the truth. There was no going back. She took his hand. Ted. The SUV tore through Manhattan's streets like a bullet, weaving through traffic with surgical precision. Arya sat in the back seat between Luca and the other man, Marco, she'd heard someone call him, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. No one spoke. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of a radio transmission in Italian. She caught fragments. Attacco fallito. Testimone. Sicuro. But her high school Italian was too rusty to piece together full sentences. She stole a glance at Luca. He sat perfectly still, his expression carved from stone, staring straight ahead. But his jaw was tight, and there was a tension in his shoulders that suggested controlled rage rather than calm. "Where are you taking me?" Arya finally managed, her voice hoarse. "Somewhere safe," Luca replied without looking at her. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting right now." Marco's phone buzzed. He answered in rapid Italian, his tone clipped and urgent. Arya caught the word palazzo and what sounded like coordinates. When he hung up, he leaned forward to speak to the driver. "Prendi il percorso lungo. Assicurati che non ci seguano." The driver nodded and took a sharp turn down a side street. Arya's pulse quickened. What did he say? Luca finally turned to look at her. He told the driver to take the long route, to make sure we're not being followed. He paused. You speak Italian? A little, barely. He studied her for a moment longer, as if trying to solve a puzzle. What's your name? Arya. Arya Bennett. Arya. He repeated it slowly, as if testing the weight of it. Do you have family? Someone who will be looking for you tonight? The question hit harder than she expected. No? No family. Friends? Not really. I mean, I have coworkers, but we're not close. The admission felt pathetic, but it was true. She'd kept everyone at arm's length since moving to New York. Easier that way. Safer. Luca nodded, as if this confirmed something he'd suspected. Good. That makes things simpler. Simpler? Arya's voice rose. Nothing about this is simple. I just watched a car explode. You're kidnapping me. Protecting you, Luca corrected, his tone sharp. There's a difference. I didn't ask for your protection. No, but you gave me mine. His gaze was unflinching. Whether you meant to or not, you involved yourself in something much bigger than a car bomb. And now we both have to deal with the consequences. Arya wanted to argue, to scream, to demand answers, but the look in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't a man who made idle threats. This was someone who lived in a world where explosions and danger were routine. And somehow, impossibly, she'd stumbled into that world. The SUV pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a building that looked like it belonged in a different century, all ornate stone and arched windows. The driver navigated through several levels before stopping in a private section cordoned off by security gates. Out, Marco said, already opening his door. Arya climbed out on shaky legs, her wet clothes clinging to her skin, her shoulders still aching from the fall. The garage was pristine, eerily so. No oil stains, no trash, just rows of expensive cars gleaming under fluorescent lights. Luca placed a hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward an elevator. His touch was surprisingly gentle, but firm enough to make it clear she didn't have a choice. The elevator ride was silent. Arya watched the numbers climb, 12, 13, 14, until they stopped at the penthouse level. The doors opened directly into an apartment that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Manhattan skyline, rain streaking down the glass like tears. The space was massive, open concept with dark hardwood floors, modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, and artwork that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Everything was immaculate, cold, beautiful. This is where you live? Arya whispered. One of my residences, Luca said, shrugging off his ruined suit jacket and draping it over a chair. Beneath it, his white shirt was smudged with ash, but still somehow elegant. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with lean muscle. Marco, get her something dry to wear and have Dr. Ricci come up. I don't need a doctor, Arya protested. Luca ignored her, already moving toward a bar in the corner of the room. He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass and downed it in one smooth motion. Then he poured another and brought it to her. Drink. It's brandy. It'll help with the shock. Arya took the glass with trembling hands. The first sip burned, but the second went down easier. Warmth spread through her chest, dulling the sharp edges of panic. Marco returned with a stack of clothes, sweatpants, a t-shirt, a hoodie, all men's sizes, but clean and dry. Bathroom's down the hall, first door on the left. Arya hesitated, then took the clothes and fled. The bathroom was as luxurious as the rest of the apartment. Marble countertops, a rainfall shower, heated floors. She caught sight of herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Hair plastered to her head, makeup smudged, eyes wide with fear. She changed quickly, her hands still shaking. The clothes were too big, but they were warm. When she emerged, she found Luca standing by the windows, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low, rapid Italian. He ended the call when he saw her. Better? She nodded. Can you please tell me what's going on? Luca gestured to the sofa. Sit. Arya sat. He remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back, his posture military straight. My name is Luca Moretti. I run a network of legitimate businesses. real estate, import-export, hospitality, but I also operate in circles where business and other interests intersect. You're in the mafia, Arya said flatly. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. That's a crude term, but not entirely inaccurate. Her stomach dropped. So the bomb was meant for me, yes. A rival organization has been making moves against my operations for the past 6 months. Tonight was their attempt to remove me from the equation. His eyes hardened. It failed. Because of me. Because of you. Arya swallowed hard. And now they'll come after me. Yes. The single word carried the weight of a death sentence. But why? Her voice cracked. I'm nobody. I didn't see their faces. I don't know anything. You interfered, Luca said simply. In their eyes, that makes you either an ally of mine or a witness they can't afford to leave alive. Either way, I'm dead. Not if I can help it. Arya looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of deception, but all she saw was cold, hard certainty. Why would you help me? You don't know me. You saved my life. He moved closer, his presence commanding the space between them. I don't take that lightly. In my world, debts are sacred. I owe you, and I always pay what I owe. I don't want payment. I just want my life back. That life is gone. His words were brutal, but not unkind. The moment you pulled me away from that car, it ended. I'm sorry, but there's no going back. Tears burned at the corners of Arya's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. So what happens now? Now you stay here, under my protection. My people will handle the situation, find out who planted the bomb, neutralize the threat, but that takes time. How much time? Days, maybe weeks. Arya's laugh was hollow. I have a job, 2 jobs, bills to pay. I can't just disappear. You'll be compensated. I don't want your money. Then what do you want? Luca's voice rose for the first time, frustration bleeding through his control. To go back to your apartment and wait for them to find you? To pretend this didn't happen? That's not an option, Arya. Not anymore. The use of her name felt intimate, personal. It threw her off balance. I want... She trailed off, realizing she didn't know how to finish that sentence. What did she want? Safety? Freedom? Her old life? None of those seemed possible anymore. Luca crouched down in front of her, bringing himself to eye level. I know this is terrifying. I know you didn't ask for any of this, but I promise you, I will keep you safe, no matter what it takes. There was something in his voice, in his eyes, that made her believe him. Okay, she whispered. Okay? I'll stay, for now. He nodded, rising to his full height. Smart choice. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marco entered with an older man carrying a medical bag. Dr. Ricci, presumably. Let him check you over, Luca said. Make sure you're not hurt. Arya submitted to the examination in a daze. The doctor was efficient and kind, declaring her bruised but otherwise unharmed. He left a bottle of pain medication and instructions to rest. When he was gone, Marco approached Luca, speaking in a low voice. Abbiamo identificato l'autista. Era uno de Castellano. Arya caught the name, Castellano. She didn't need a translation to understand the significance. Luca's expression darkened. Sei sicuro? Sì. Al 100%. Bene. Prepara una risposta. Marco nodded and left. Arya stood, her exhaustion warring with curiosity. Who are the Castellano? Luca poured himself another drink. A family I've been at odds with for years. They control the docks, among other things. This was their opening move. And now? Now, I respond. He downed the drink. But that's not your concern. Your concern is staying alive and staying out of sight. For how long? He met her gaze. As long as it takes. The first night was the hardest. Arya lay in the guest bedroom, a room larger than her entire apartment, with a bed so soft it felt like floating, and stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the explosion, felt the heat, heard the roar. She'd saved a man's life. and lost her own in the process. Somewhere around 4 a.m., she finally drifted off, only to be jolted awake by nightmares, twisted metal, flames, faceless men chasing her through dark streets. When dawn broke, pale and gray through the rain-streaked windows, Arya dragged herself out of bed and ventured into the main living area. Luca was already awake, seated at a dining table with a laptop and several phones, his expression focused. He'd changed into a fresh suit, navy this time, with a crisp white shirt and no tie. He looked like he'd slept 8 hours, though Arya suspected he'd slept as little as she had. "Coffee?" he offered, nodding toward a gleaming espresso machine on the counter. "Please." He stood and moved to the machine with practiced ease, pulling a perfect shot and handing it to her in a delicate porcelain cup. "Sugar? Milk?" "Black is fine." He raised an eyebrow. "Strong constitution." "I'm a waitress. I live on coffee." "Lived," he corrected gently. Past tense. The reminder stung, but she didn't argue. She took a sip, rich, bold, infinitely better than the diner sludge she was used to, and let the caffeine work its magic. "Did you sleep?" Luca asked. "Not really. You?" "Enough." They stood in silence for a moment, the city waking up beyond the windows. From this height, Manhattan looked almost peaceful. Tiny cars moving through streets, people starting their days, oblivious to the violence that had unfolded the night before. "What happens today?" Arya asked. "Today, you rest, recover. Tomorrow, we'll talk about next steps." "Next steps? You can't stay here indefinitely. It's not practical. So we'll need to find a longer-term solution." "Like what?" "I'm working on it." Before she could press further, Marco entered, holding a tablet. "Luca, you need to see this." Luca took the tablet, his expression hardening as he scanned whatever was on the screen. Then he handed it to Arya. It was a news article. "Explosion rocks Lower Manhattan, 1 dead. Investigation underway." Arya's blood ran cold. "1 dead?" "The driver," Luca said. "He didn't make it." Guilt twisted in her stomach. I couldn't." "He was part of the setup," Luca said firmly. "He knew what he was doing. His death is on the Castellano, not you." But the weight of it settled on her shoulders anyway. A man was dead, and she'd been there. She'd seen it happen. "There's more," Marco said grimly. He tapped the screen, pulling up a grainy video. Arya's heart stopped. It was security footage from the street. Timestamp 12:47 a.m. And there she was, running toward Luca, grabbing his arm, pulling him back. The explosion, the chaos. Her face was visible, clear as day. "They have this?" she whispered. "Everyone has this," Marco said. "It's already on social media. People are calling you a hero." Arya looked at Luca, panic rising. "You said they'd see the footage. You said they'd come for me." "I did, and they will." His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with intensity, "which is why we're moving you, tonight." "Moving me where?" "Somewhere safer, somewhere they won't think to look." "And where is that?" Luca's smile was cold, almost predatory. "You'll see, on." By nightfall, Arya found herself in another SUV, this time heading out of the city. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective under the glow of streetlights. Luca sat beside her again, silent and watchful. Marco drove, another armed guard in the passenger seat. "Where are we going?" Arya asked for the 3rd time. "Connecticut," Luca finally answered. "I have a property there, private, secure." "You have a lot of properties. I believe in being prepared." The drive took just over an hour. They left the chaos of the city behind, trading skyscrapers for trees, concrete for open space. Eventually, they turned onto a private road that wound through dense forest before opening up to reveal a sprawling estate. Arya's jaw dropped. The house, if you could even call it that, was a masterpiece of modern architecture. All glass and steel in clean lines, perched on a hillside overlooking Long Island Sound. Lights glowed from within, warm and inviting against the dark landscape. "This is yours?" she breathed. "One of my favorites," Luca admitted. "I come here when I need to think." They parked in a circular driveway, and Luca led her inside. The interior was just as stunning as the exterior, high ceilings, open spaces, art that looked like it belonged in galleries. But unlike the Manhattan penthouse, this place felt lived in. Warmer, more personal. There are 5 bedrooms upstairs, Luca said, gesturing toward a floating staircase. Pick whichever you like. The kitchen is fully stocked. Security is posted outside. You won't see them, but they're there. How long will I be here? As long as necessary. Arya turned to face him. You keep saying that, but what does it actually mean? Days, weeks, months? Luca's expression softened, just slightly. I'm working on ending this, quickly, but these things take time. What things? He hesitated, as if deciding how much to tell her. Finally, he said, War. The word hung in the air between them. You're going to war, Arya said slowly, because of what happened last night. I was already at war, Luca corrected. Last night just brought it into the open. And me? You're collateral damage they'll try to exploit. His jaw tightened. I won't let that happen. Arya didn't know what to say to that. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, had appointed himself her protector, and she didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. Get some rest, Luca said, his tone gentle. We'll talk more tomorrow. He turned to leave, but Arya's voice stopped him. Luca. He glanced back. Thank you for keeping me safe. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. You saved my life, Arya. This is the least I can do. And then he was gone, leaving her alone in a palace that wasn't hers, trapped in a life she didn't choose, wondering how a single moment of instinct had led her here. 3 days passed in strange, surreal isolation. Arya explored the estate, finding hidden corners and breathtaking views. She read books from Luca's extensive library. She ate meals prepared by a chef she never saw. And she waited. Luca came and went, sometimes staying for hours, other times disappearing for days. When he was there, they talked. About inconsequential things, mostly. He asked about her life before the explosion. She told him about growing up in foster care, about the string of dead-end jobs, about the dream of one day opening her own cafe. He listened, really listened. And sometimes she caught glimpses of the man beneath the armor, the one who loved classical music, who collected art, who had scars he didn't talk about. But she also saw the other side, the phone calls in Italian, the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes would go cold and distant when Marco delivered updates. The war was escalating. She could feel it. On the 4th night, Luca arrived late, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Arya was in the kitchen, making tea, when he walked in. You look terrible, she said before she could stop herself. He laughed, a short, humorless sound. I've had better days. Want some tea? I want bourbon, but tea will do. She poured him a cup, and they sat together at the kitchen island, the silence surprisingly comfortable. How bad is it? Arya finally asked. Luca took a long sip before answering. Bad. The Castellano are pushing back harder than expected. They've hit 2 of my properties in the past 48 hours. No casualties, thankfully, but it's a message. What kind of message? That they're not backing down. Arya set down her cup. And neither are you. No. Why? Why not just let them have whatever they want? End this? Luca's eyes darkened. Because if I give them an inch, they'll take everything. That's how this works. Show weakness, and you're dead. There's no middle ground. So you fight. So I fight. And I'm stuck here, hiding while you risk your life. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment the mask slipped. You're not stuck. You're safe. There's a difference. It doesn't feel like it. Luca reached across the island and placed his hand over hers. The contact was electric, unexpected. I know this isn't the life you wanted. I know you're scared and angry and frustrated, but I need you to trust me a little longer. Can you do that? Arya stared at their joined hands. His was warm, strong, scarred across the knuckles. Hers looked small and pale in comparison. I don't have much choice, do I? There's always a choice, Luca said softly. You could walk away, right now. I wouldn't stop you. And then what? They'd find me in a week, a day maybe. Maybe. Maybe not. Arya pulled her hand back, shaking her head. You really don't believe that, do you? You know they'd come for me. Yes, he admitted. I do. Then there's no choice. Not really. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Luca stood, draining the last of his tea. Get some sleep, Arya. Tomorrow might bring answers. But tomorrow brought something else entirely. Arya woke to the sound of shouting. She bolted upright, her heart racing, and stumbled to the window. Down below, the driveway was flooded with light, headlights from multiple vehicles, armed men moving with military precision. Terror gripped her. They'd found her. She grabbed her phone. Luca had given her a secure line and called him. He answered on the first ring. Stay in your room. Lock the door. Do not come out until I come get you. What's happening? Just do what I say. The line went dead. Arya locked the door with shaking hands and backed away, her mind racing. She could hear footsteps now, heavy boots on hardwood floors, voices shouting commands, and then a single gunshot. She clapped a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. Seconds stretched into minutes, minutes into an eternity. Finally, a knock at the door. Arya, it's me. Luca's voice. She unlocked the door and flung it open. He stood there, unharmed but tense, his eyes scanning her face. You're okay? She nodded, unable to speak. Good. Come with me. He led her downstairs where Marco and several other men were gathered in the living room. On the floor, zip-tied and bleeding from a split lip, was a man she didn't recognize. Who is he? Arya whispered. One of theirs, Luca said coldly. He got past the perimeter. Won't happen again. The bound man glared at Luca, spitting blood onto the pristine floor. Moretti, you think you can hide her forever? You think... Luca's fist connected with the man's jaw, cutting him off mid-sentence. Take him out of here. I'll deal with him later. Two guards hauled the man to his feet and dragged him away. Arya's legs felt weak. They know I'm here. They know you're somewhere, Luca corrected. This was a fishing expedition. They got lucky. Lucky? Her voice rose, hysteria creeping in. They almost got to me. But they didn't. Luca gripped her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. And they won't, I promise you. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. His voice was steel. Because I'm ending this. Tonight. Arya's breath caught. What do you mean? Luca released her and turned to Marco. Gather everyone. It's time. Marco nodded and disappeared. Luca, Arya said urgently. What are you doing? He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something dangerous in his eyes. Something final. I'm going to finish this war. The room emptied quickly after Luca's declaration, leaving only the two of them standing in the cavernous living space. The silence pressed down like a physical weight. Arya could still smell the coppery tang of blood on the floor where the intruder had been moments before. You can't just go to war, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. People will die. Luca walked to the bar and poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon. He didn't offer her any this time. People are already dying. The difference is, after tonight, it will be over. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He downed the drink in one smooth motion, then set the glass down with deliberate care. I've been building toward this for weeks. The Castellano made their move. Now I make mine. Arya wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the house. And what happens to me while you're out there playing soldier? His eyes snapped to hers, sharp and unyielding. You stay here, under guard, and you pray I come back. The bluntness of it stole her breath. That's it? That's your plan for keeping me safe? It's the only plan that matters right now. Luca moved toward her, closing the distance until he stood close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. I need you to understand something, Arya. The moment you pulled me away from that car, you became part of this whether you wanted to or not. The Castellano won't stop. They can't afford to. And as long as you're alive, you're leverage against me. So this is about you, she said bitterly. About your war, your pride, This is about survival. His voice rose, echoing off the glass walls. Then, more quietly, Theirs or ours. There's no middle ground anymore. Arya wanted to argue, to rail against the unfairness of it all, but the exhaustion in his face stopped her. This man, this powerful, dangerous man, looked worn down in a way that had nothing to do with physical fatigue. He carried the weight of decisions she couldn't fathom, consequences that rippled far beyond her understanding. "How long?" she asked finally. "How long what?" "How long until it's over, one way or another?" Luca's jaw tightened. 48 hours. Maybe less. "And if you lose, I won't. But if you do, then Marco has instructions to get you out. New identity, new city, new life. You'll disappear so completely they'll never find you." The matter-of-fact way he said it made her stomach clench. "You've thought this through. I think everything through." He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek so gently it felt like a ghost touch. "I won't let them hurt you, Arya, no matter what happens to me." Before she could respond, Marco reappeared in the doorway. "We're ready." Luca's hand dropped. The softness in his expression vanished, replaced by the cold mask of a commander preparing for battle. He nodded once and turned to leave. "Luca." He paused, but didn't look back. "Come back alive," Arya said, hating how small her voice sounded. "I intend to." And then he was gone. But the hours that followed were torture. Arya paced the living room like a caged animal, unable to sit still, unable to think about anything except what was happening out there in the dark. Marco had left 2 guards posted inside, silent, stoic men who watched her with professional detachment, and she knew there were more scattered throughout the property. She tried to distract herself, turned on the television, but the mindless chatter of late-night talk shows felt obscene. Picked up a book, but the words blurred together meaninglessly. Made tea she didn't drink. Around 3 in the morning, exhaustion finally dragged her to the couch. She curled up under a throw blanket, telling herself she'd just rest her eyes for a moment. She dreamed of fire and smoke, of Luca's face disappearing into darkness, of running through endless corridors that led nowhere. When she woke, pale dawn light was streaming through the windows. Her neck ached from the awkward angle, and her mouth tasted like cotton. One of the guards had draped an additional blanket over her at some point. She sat up, disoriented, and checked her phone. 6:37 a.m. No messages, no calls. Fear coiled in her gut. She approached the nearest guard, a man built like a linebacker with a scar running through his left eyebrow. "Have you heard anything?" "No, ma'am." "When was the last communication?" 4 hours ago. Everything was proceeding as planned. 4 hours. An eternity in a firefight, in a war. "What does that mean?" Arya pressed. "What's proceeding as planned?" The guard's expression remained neutral. "I'm not authorized to share operational details. I'm not asking for a tactical briefing. I just want to know if he's alive." "Ma'am, I don't have that information." Arya wanted to scream. Instead, she walked away, her hands shaking with impotent frustration. She made coffee she didn't want and watched the sun rise over Long Island Sound, painting the water in shades of gold and pink. Beautiful, serene, utterly at odds with the violence unfolding somewhere in the city. 7 o'clock came and went, then 8, then 9. Still nothing. By 10, Arya was seriously considering stealing a car and driving back to Manhattan herself. The not knowing was worse than any truth could be. At least if she knew, even if the news was bad, she could process it, deal with it, move forward. This limbo was unbearable. At 10:43, her phone buzzed. She lunged for it so fast she nearly dropped it. A text from an unknown number. "It's done. Coming home." Relief flooded through her so intensely her knees went weak. She sank into the nearest chair, clutching the phone like a lifeline. He was alive. It was over. The guards must have received similar communication because they visibly relaxed, their rigid postures easing slightly. "When will he be here?" Arya asked. Scarface checked his own phone. "ETA 90 minutes. 90 minutes. She could survive 90 minutes. She used the time to shower and change, trying to wash away the grime of fear and sleeplessness. When she emerged, feeling marginally more human, she found fresh pastries laid out in the kitchen. Someone must have made a supply run while she was upstairs. She picked at a croissant without really tasting it, her eyes constantly flicking to the window, watching for headlights. At exactly 12:15, three black SUVs rolled up the driveway. Arya was at the door before they'd fully stopped, her heart hammering. The guards moved to flank her, but she barely noticed. All her attention was focused on the lead vehicle. The door opened. Luca stepped out. He looked like he'd been through hell. His shirt was torn and blood-stained. She couldn't tell if it was his or someone else's. His knuckles were split and bruised. A cut above his left eye had been hastily bandaged, but he was standing, walking, alive. Their eyes met across the distance. Arya didn't remember deciding to move, but suddenly she was running down the steps, closing the space between them. She stopped just short of throwing herself into his arms, suddenly uncertain. "You're hurt," she said stupidly. "I've had worse." His voice was rough, scraped raw with exhaustion. "It's over, Arya." The Castellano backed down. "You're safe now." The word should have brought relief, should have made her cry with happiness. Instead, anger surged through her, hot and irrational and unstoppable. "You were gone for almost 24 hours. She shoved his chest, not hard enough to move him, but enough to make her point. "No updates? No calls? Nothing. I thought you were dead." Luca caught her wrists gently but firmly. "I couldn't risk communication. They were monitoring everything." "I don't care. You should have." Her voice broke. "I was terrified." Something shifted in his expression. The cold mask cracked, revealing raw emotion beneath. "I'm sorry. I didn't think—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "I'm not used to having someone worry about me." "Well, get used to it," Arya snapped, then immediately felt foolish. What was she saying? What claim did she have on this man's safety, on his life? But Luca was smiling, a real smile, small but genuine. "Noted." Marco approached, tactfully clearing his throat. "Boss, we should get you inside. Dr. Ricci is waiting." Luca nodded but didn't release Arya's wrists. "Walk with me?" She let him guide her back into the house, acutely aware of his touch, of the warmth of his hands on her skin. Inside, the controlled chaos of aftermath unfolded around them. Men moving equipment, checking perimeters, coordinating next steps. But Luca led her past all of it, up the stairs to a private office she hadn't seen before. He closed the door behind them, muffling the noise from below. "Tell me what happened," Arya said. Luca leaned against the desk, wincing slightly. "We hit 3 of their operations simultaneously. Shut down their drug distribution, their gambling houses, their weapons storage. By dawn, they'd lost millions in product and infrastructure. You destroyed their business. I crippled it, enough to bring them to the negotiating table. And they just agreed? Just like that?" "Not exactly." Luca's smile was sharp, predatory. "There was some convincing required. But ultimately, they saw reason. The war was costing them more than they could afford to lose. They withdrew their claim on my territory and retracted the bounty on you." Arya absorbed this, trying to reconcile the elegant, controlled man in front of her with someone capable of the violence he was describing. "People died, didn't they?" "Yes." "How many?" "Does it matter?" "To me? Yes." Luca studied her for a long moment. 4 of theirs, 2 of mine. All soldiers who knew the risks when they signed up. 6 lives. Gone. Because of a war she'd inadvertently escalated by saving one man's life. "I can see you blaming yourself," Luca said quietly. "Don't. This was inevitable. The Castellano and I have been circling each other for years. The bomb was just the spark. If it hadn't been that, it would have been something else. But it was that. It was me. No, it was them." He pushed off the desk and crossed to her, his movements deliberate despite his injuries. "They chose violence. They chose escalation. You chose to save a life. Don't let their choices become your burden." Arya wanted to believe him, desperately. But the weight of those 6 deaths pressed down on her regardless. A knock interrupted them. Dr. Ricci entered, medical bag in hand, and immediately began tisking over Luca's injuries. "You need stitches for this," he said, examining the cut above Luca's eye, "and possibly an X-ray for these ribs." "Later," Luca said. "Now," the doctor insisted, "or I'm calling your mother and telling her you're being difficult." Luca's expression turned almost comically alarmed. "You wouldn't." Try me. Arya couldn't help it. She laughed. The sound surprised her, bubbling up unexpectedly. Both men looked at her. Sorry, she said, pressing a hand to her mouth. It's just, you're terrified of your mother? You've never met my mother, Lucas said darkly. The woman once made a grown man cry just by looking at him. She sounds formidable. That's a diplomatic way of putting it. Dr. Ricci shooed Arya toward the door. Give us some privacy. This won't take long. She retreated to the hallway, still smiling despite everything. The idea of Luca, powerful, dangerous Luca, being intimidated by his mother was oddly humanizing. Downstairs, she found Marco coordinating the security detail. He looked up when she approached. He's really okay? She asked. He'll be fine. Luca's survived worse. How much worse? Marco's expression turned guarded. That's his story to tell, not mine. Fair enough. Arya wandered into the kitchen, suddenly ravenous now that the adrenaline was fading. She made herself a proper meal, scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit, and ate mechanically while her mind processed everything. It was over. The war. The threat. She was safe. So why didn't she feel relieved? Maybe because safe came with strings attached. She was safe because Luca had made her safe. Because he'd declared war on her behalf. Because 6 men had died to secure her freedom. That kind of debt wasn't measured in money or favors. It was deeper. More fundamental. She was washing her plate when Luca appeared, freshly bandaged and wearing clean clothes. He moved stiffly, favoring his right side. The ribs, she guessed. Dr. Ricci says I'll live, he announced. That's good news. He also says I need bed rest for at least 48 hours. Will you actually rest? Luca's smile was wry. Unlikely, but I'll try. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Luca said, I need to talk to you about what happens next. Arya's stomach tightened. Okay. The immediate threat is gone. The Castellano have agreed to a ceasefire. But that doesn't mean you can just go back to your old life. I figured. Your face is all over the news, social media. People know you saved me. Some think you're a hero. Others, people in my world, see you as connected to me. Either way, you're visible, vulnerable. So I need to disappear, Arya said flatly. Not disappear, just relocate. Start fresh somewhere the attention won't follow. Where? Wherever you want. I have resources in a dozen cities. Pick one and I'll set you up. New apartment, new job, new identity if necessary. Whatever you need to build a life. It was generous. More than generous. And yet, the thought of leaving, of starting over again in another strange city, made her chest tight with something she couldn't name. What if I don't want to leave? The words came out before she'd fully thought them through. Luca blinked, clearly surprised. What? What if I want to stay? Here, or in New York, near you. Arya, that's not a good idea. Why not? Because my world is dangerous. You've seen that firsthand. The peace with the Castellano is fragile. There will be other threats, other wars. I can't... He stopped, jaw working. I can't guarantee your safety if you stay. You can't guarantee it if I leave either, Arya pointed out. Someone could recognize me tomorrow in Seattle or Miami, or wherever you ship me off to. At least here, I know what I'm dealing with. You don't know what you're dealing with, Lucas said, his voice hard. You've seen one night of violence. That's nothing compared to what my life entails. Then show me. She moved closer, driven by impulse and something deeper. If it's so terrible, if it's so dangerous, show me the truth. Let me decide for myself whether I can handle it. Why would you want that? Why would you choose this over freedom? Because I don't have freedom. The words burst out, raw and honest. I've never had it. My whole life has been surviving, scraping by, keeping my head down. I've been invisible for so long I forgot what it felt like to matter. But these past few days, terrifying as they've been, I felt more alive than I have in years. Luca stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You're confusing adrenaline with purpose. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally seeing clearly. She took a breath, steadying herself. I'm not asking to join your organization or become some kind of gangster's mall. I just want a chance to figure out who I am when I'm not running or hiding or barely surviving. And you think you'll find that here, in my world? I think I'll find it wherever I choose to look for it, and right now, I'm choosing here. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Luca's expression cycled through emotions too quickly to track. Frustration, concern, something that might have been hope. Finally, he said, "If you stay, there are rules." "I'm listening." "You work for me, legitimately. I own hotels, restaurants, real estate firms. Pick an area that interests you, and I'll find you a position, a real one, with real responsibilities. Not charity." Arya's heart stuttered. "You're serious." "Completely. You're smart, resourceful, and you've already proven you can think under pressure. Those are skills I value." He paused. "But you follow my security protocols, no arguments. If my people say you need protection, you accept it. If they say a situation is too dangerous, you listen." "Okay. And you understand that being associated with me comes with risks. People will judge you. Some will fear you. Others will try to use you to get to me." "I understand. Do you?" Luca moved closer, his intensity almost overwhelming. "Because once you make this choice, there's no going back. Your old life, the invisible waitress just trying to survive, that's gone. You'll be Arya Bennett, the woman who saved Luca Moretti. Everything you do will be scrutinized, every relationship questioned. Is that really what you want?" Arya met his gaze without flinching. "My old life was already gone the moment I pulled you away from that car. You said so yourself. So I can either run from what happened, or I can own it. Build something new from the ashes." She lifted her chin. "I choose to build." For a long moment, Luca simply looked at her. Then slowly, he extended his hand. "Welcome to the family business, Arya Bennett." She took his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and learning. True to his word, Luca put Arya to work. She started at one of his boutique hotels in Tribeca, initially shadowing the operations manager to learn the business. The work was challenging: guest relations, staff coordination, vendor negotiations. But she threw herself into it with the same determination that had kept her alive all these years. The staff treated her with a mixture of curiosity and deference. Word had spread about who she was, about what she'd done. Some whispered when she passed. Others went out of their way to be helpful, perhaps hoping to curry favor with the boss's what? Protégé? Friend? She wasn't sure what to call herself. Luca checked in regularly, appearing at unexpected times to observe her work or take her to dinner under the guise of business meetings. These evenings were strange, formal yet intimate, professional yet personal. They talked about everything and nothing, carefully dancing around the obvious tension building between them. He was teaching her, she realized, not just about business, but about his world, the unspoken codes, the careful hierarchies, how to read a room, how to project authority, how to know when someone was lying. "You have good instincts," he told her one evening over wine at a restaurant where the staff knew him by name and never brought a bill. "You read people well. That's rare." "Growing up in foster care teaches you to watch for danger," Arya said. "You learn to spot the adults who mean well and the ones who don't. The kids who'll have your back and the ones who'll steal your stuff the second you turn around. Survival skills. The best education I ever got." Luca smiled at that. "My mother would say the same thing. She grew up in Naples with nothing, taught herself to read by stealing newspapers from cafe trash bins. Now she runs a charitable foundation and terrifies diplomats. I'd like to meet her someday. Careful what you wish for. She'll either love you or eat you alive, possibly both." Arya laughed, then sobered. "Do you think she'd approve of me working for you?" "My mother approves of anyone who works hard and doesn't take my nonsense, so yes, I think she'd like you very much." The warmth in his voice made something flutter in Arya's chest. She pushed the feeling down, reminding herself that this was business. Professional. Nothing more. But that became harder to maintain as the days turned into weeks. There were small moments that felt like more. The way Luca's hand would brush hers when he handed her documents. How his eyes would linger when he thought she wasn't looking. The protective way he positioned himself when they walked into crowded rooms, always keeping her on his right side, always scanning for threats. Marco noticed. Of course he did. "You're playing with fire," he told Arya one afternoon when Luca was in a meeting. They were in the hotel lobby, reviewing inventory reports. I don't know what you're talking about, Arya said, not looking up from her tablet. Yes, you do, and so does he. The question is what you're both going to do about it. Nothing. There's nothing to do about it. I work for him, that's all. Marco snorted. Keep telling yourself that. It's true. Arya, I've known Luca for 15 years. I've seen him with women, beautiful women, powerful women, women who threw themselves at him. He was always polite, sometimes interested, but never... He paused, searching for the word. Never protective. Not like he is with you. That's different. I saved his life. He feels responsible. Responsibility doesn't make a man look at a woman the way he looks at you. Arya finally glanced up. And how does he look at me? Marco's smile was knowing. Like you're the most dangerous thing in his world, and the most precious. Before Arya could respond, Luca emerged from the elevator with two businessmen in expensive suits. They were laughing about something. The deal clearly concluded successfully. Luca's eyes immediately found Arya across the lobby, and his expression softened in that subtle way she'd come to recognize. Her heart did that traitorous flutter again. Marco leaned in close. See? Dangerous and precious. He walked away before she could argue. That night, Luca invited her to his penthouse for what he called a celebration of her first month of employment. She almost declined. The intimacy of being alone with him in his personal space felt like crossing a line. But curiosity won out. The penthouse looked different than she remembered from that first chaotic night. Softer somehow, more lived in. There was music playing, something classical and haunting, and candles on the dining table where dinner had been set for two. This is very fancy for a business dinner, Arya said, trying to keep her tone light. You've worked hard. You deserve fancy. Luca pulled out her chair. Besides, I wanted to give you something. You've already given me everything. A job, security, a future. This is different. He disappeared into another room and returned carrying a small wooden box, ornately carved and clearly very old. He set it on the table in front of her. What is it? Arya asked, almost afraid to touch it. Open it. She lifted the lid carefully. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a pendant, a delicate silver chain holding a small locket in the shape of a bird in flight. Her breath caught. How did you... You mentioned once that your mother used to wear a locket like this, that it was lost when you entered the foster system. Luca's voice was gentle. I had my people search. It took some time, but we found it. Or rather, we found it had been sold to a pawn shop in Brooklyn 20 years ago, then to a collector, then to an estate sale. I bought it back. Arya's hands trembled as she lifted the locket. She opened it with shaking fingers and found exactly what she remembered, a tiny photograph of a woman with kind eyes and Arya's smile, and a lock of baby-fine hair. Her mother. A piece of her past she thought was gone forever. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would you do this? Luca crouched beside her chair so they were eye level. Because you've lost enough. Because you deserve to have something that's yours, something that connects you to where you came from. He paused. And because I wanted to see you smile like this. Arya was crying. She didn't realize it until tears dripped onto the locket. Luca, Words failed. How could she possibly express what this meant? He wiped her tears with his thumb, the gesture achingly tender. You don't have to say anything. But she did. She had to. Thank you. No one has ever... Her voice broke, and then, without thinking, she leaned forward and kissed him. For a heartbeat, Luca went rigid with surprise. Then he was kissing her back, one hand cupping her face, the other sliding into her hair. The kiss was everything Arya had imagined and nothing like she'd expected. Gentle, yet demanding. Controlled, yet desperately hungry. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. We shouldn't, he murmured. I know. It's complicated. I know. There are reasons, good reasons, why this is a bad idea. I know. Neither of them moved away. Arya, Luca said, his voice rough. If we do this, if we cross this line, everything changes. I need you to be sure. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I've never been more sure of anything. His control snapped. Luca kissed her again, deeper this time, with an intensity that made the world tilt on its axis. His hands moved to her waist, pulling her up from the chair until she was pressed against him, feeling the solid strength of his body, the controlled power barely leashed beneath the surface. Arya's fingers tangled in his hair, her heart racing so fast she thought it might explode. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Luca's eyes were dark with desire and something deeper, something that looked almost like vulnerability. "Stay tonight," he said, his voice rough. "Not because you work for me, not because you owe me, but because you want to." "I want to," Arya whispered. He took her hand and led her through the penthouse to his bedroom, a space she'd never seen, intimate and masculine, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. They stood there for a moment, the gravity of the decision hanging between them. Then Luca's phone rang. He ignored it, kissed her again, more urgently. But the phone kept ringing, insistent and shrill. "Merda," he muttered against her lips. "I'm sorry, I have to. I know." Arya stepped back, giving him space, even though every fiber of her being protested the distance. Luca answered with a clipped, "What?" then went very still as he listened. His expression shifted from annoyance to cold fury in the span of seconds. "When? How many? No, don't move until I get there. 20 minutes. He ended the call and looked at Arya, regret and anger warring in his eyes. "I have to go. There's been an incident at one of my warehouses." "What kind of incident?" "The kind that requires my immediate presence." He was already moving, grabbing a jacket, checking the gun holstered at his back, a reminder of the violence that was never far from his world. "Marco will stay with you. Don't leave the building." "Luca, wait. Is this about the Castellano? I thought you had a ceasefire." "So did I." His jaw was tight, "which is why I need to find out who's stupid enough to break it." He kissed her once more, hard and fast, then was gone. Arya stood alone in his bedroom, her lips still tingling, her body still humming with unfulfilled desire. The sudden absence of him felt like a physical ache. She touched the locket around her neck. He'd fastened it there before that first kiss, and tried to steady her breathing. Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "He asked me to make sure you're comfortable. Can I get you anything?" "The truth would be nice," Arya said. "What's really happening?" Marco hesitated, then sighed. "Someone hit one of our storage facilities, burned half of it to the ground. 3 guards are in the hospital." Arya's blood ran cold. Who would do that? That's what Luca's going to find out. Marco's face was grim. The Castellano swore an oath. If they broke it, there will be consequences. More war. If necessary. Arya sank onto the edge of Luca's bed, the weight of reality crashing down. This was his world, violence and betrayal and constant vigilance, and she'd just committed herself to being part of it. "You can still walk away," Marco said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. He'd let you go. He'd make sure you were safe, set up somewhere far from all this. You don't have to stay. "I'm not leaving. Even knowing what you know? What this life costs?" Arya met his eyes, especially knowing that. He needs people around him who won't run when things get dangerous, people who choose to stay. Marco studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're braver than you look. Or more foolish. In this world, they're often the same thing." He left her alone after that. Arya changed out of her dress into the comfortable clothes she'd left in the guest room weeks ago. It felt like a lifetime. She tried to sleep but couldn't, her mind racing with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Dawn was breaking when Luca finally returned. Arya heard the elevator, the low murmur of voices, then footsteps approaching. She was curled up in an armchair by the windows, watching the city wake up, when he entered. He looked exhausted and furious. "What happened?" she asked. Luca poured himself a drink, bourbon, despite the early hour, and downed it before answering. "It wasn't the Castellano." Arya blinked. "Then who?" "Someone inside my organization." The words were bitter, laced with betrayal. "One of my own people sold information to a third party, told them exactly when and where to strike for maximum damage." "Do you know who?" "I have suspicions. Marco's interrogating the guards who survived. One of them might have seen something. He set the glass down with deliberate care, as if afraid he might shatter it otherwise. Betrayal from outside I can handle. It's expected, but from within... He shook his head. That's worse. Arya rose and crossed to him, placing a hand on his arm. What will you do? Find them. Make an example. His eyes were cold, utterly merciless. No one betrays me and lives. The casual way he said it should have terrified her, should have sent her running. Instead, she understood. In his world, mercy was weakness. Betrayal demanded blood. I'm sorry, she said softly. Luca's expression softened fractionally. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, his face buried in her hair. This is what my life is, Arya. Constant threats, constant vigilance. People trying to take what's mine, destroy what I've built. He pulled back to look at her. Last night, what almost happened between us, I need you to understand that being with me means accepting all of this. The danger, the violence, the impossible choices. I know. Do you? Really? His grip tightened. Because it's not romantic. It's not some adventure. People die, people I care about. And one day, it could be you. It could be me crossing the street tomorrow, Arya countered. Or getting sick. Or any one of 1,000 random disasters. Life doesn't come with guarantees, Luca. At least with you, I know what I'm choosing. He searched her face, looking for doubt, for fear, for any sign she didn't mean it. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he kissed her, gentle this time, almost reverent. You're extraordinary, he murmured against her lips. I'm terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. They stood there in the growing light, holding each other, while somewhere in the city, a traitor was being hunted. The call came 4 hours later. Marco had found something. A junior accountant named David Chen, who'd been accessing files he had no clearance for, making copies, meeting with unknown contacts. When confronted, he'd tried to run. He didn't get far. Luca insisted on handling the interrogation personally. Arya wanted to go with him, but he refused. This isn't something you need to see, he said, his voice gentle but firm. I thought you wanted me to understand your world. I do. But there's a difference between understanding and witnessing. He cupped her face in his hands. Trust me on this. Some things can't be unseen. So she stayed behind, pacing the penthouse like a caged animal, Marco's words from earlier echoing in her head. Dangerous and precious. That's what she was to Luca. And maybe what he was becoming to her. When Luca returned hours later, there was blood on his shirt. He saw her look and said simply, he talked. And then? And then he stopped being a problem. Arya swallowed hard. Who was he working for? A smaller family trying to make a name for themselves. The Russos. They thought if they could weaken me enough, they could move in on my territory. Luca stripped off the blood-stained shirt with mechanical efficiency. They were wrong. What are you going to do? Send a message. Tomorrow night. He looked at her, his eyes hard. I need you to stay here. With full security. Don't go to the hotel. Don't go anywhere until I say it's clear. Luca, this isn't negotiable, Arya. The Russos know about you now. Chen told them everything, that you saved my life, that you work for me, that you're... He stopped, jaw working. That I'm what? Important to me. The admission seemed to cost him something. Which makes you a target. Again. The familiar fear crept back, cold and insidious. She'd thought this was over. Thought she was safe. But safety in Luca's world was an illusion, fragile and temporary. How long? She asked. 24 hours. Maybe less if things go smoothly. And if they don't? Luca crossed to her, still shirtless, his skin marked with scars she'd never noticed before. Evidence of a life lived on the edge of violence. Then I'll do whatever it takes to end this, permanently. He kissed her, hard and possessive, as if trying to brand the memory of her into his skin. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. I need you to promise me something, he said. What? If something goes wrong, if I don't come back, you take the out I'm giving you. New identity, new life. Marco has everything prepared. You disappear, and you never look back. Don't talk like that. Promise me, Arya. She wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him that she'd fight, that she'd find whoever hurt him and make them pay. But the look in his eyes stopped her. This was important to him, maybe the most important thing. "I promise," she whispered. "Good." He kissed her once more, then pulled away. "I need to prepare. Try to rest." Rest proved impossible. Arya spent the day in a fog of anxiety, checking her phone obsessively for updates that never came. Marco remained a constant, silent presence, his mere proximity both comforting and unsettling. As evening fell, casting long shadows across the penthouse, Arya found herself drawn to the windows. Somewhere out there, Luca was preparing for war. Again, because of her. Because she'd saved him that rainy night and set off a chain reaction of violence and consequence. "Second guessing?" Marco asked, appearing beside her. "Every minute of every day," Arya admitted. "But that doesn't mean I regret it. He'll come back. He always does." "You sound certain." "I've seen him survive worse, much worse." Marco paused. "But I've also never seen him like this. Distracted, emotional. That worries me." Arya looked at him sharply. "You think I'm making him weak? I think you're making him human, which in this business can be a liability or a strength. The question is which one it becomes." Before Arya could respond, Marco's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then swore in Italian. "What is it?" Arya demanded. "The Russos moved first. They hit one of our clubs downtown. Casualties reported." He was already moving, barking orders into his phone in rapid Italian. "Where's Luca?" "En route. He's calling in everyone. This is it. Full escalation." Arya's stomach dropped. "How bad?" Marco's expression was grim. "Bad enough that he's authorized lethal force. No prisoners, no mercy." The next hours were torture. Arya paced, unable to sit still, while Marco coordinated from the penthouse. His phone never stopped ringing. Updates, orders, confirmations. She caught fragments. 3 dead at the club. Russo's main warehouse surrounded. Luca's team in position. Then suddenly, silence. Marco stood frozen, phone pressed to his ear, his face pale. "What?" Arya's voice came out as a whisper. "What happened?" "Gunfire heavy. They walked into an ambush." He listened more, his expression shifting from shock to cold fury. "Luca's hit." The world tilted. "How bad?" "Unknown. They're extracting now." Arya's legs gave out. She sank onto the couch, her vision tunneling. This couldn't be happening, not after everything, not when she'd just found something worth fighting for. Marco was shouting into the phone now, demanding updates, coordinating emergency response. But Arya barely heard him. All she could think about was Luca, bleeding somewhere in the dark, possibly dying because he'd been distracted by her. Because loving her, if that's what this was, had made him vulnerable. 20 minutes felt like 20 years. When the elevator finally opened, Arya was on her feet instantly. Dr. Ricci rushed in first, medical bag in hand, followed by 2 of Luca's men supporting him between them. Luca was conscious, but barely, his face ashen, his shirt soaked with blood. He'd been shot in the shoulder and possibly the side. It was hard to tell through all the blood. "Dining table," Dr. Ricci commanded. "Now." They laid Luca out on the table where just last night they'd shared dinner and kisses and possibilities. The contrast was obscene. Arya tried to approach, but Marco held her back. "Let the doctor work. I need to eat. You need to stay out of the way." Dr. Ricci cut away Luca's shirt, revealing the damage. 1 bullet hole in the shoulder, another that had grazed his ribs. So much blood. Too much. Luca's eyes found hers across the room. "Arya," he managed, his voice weak. She broke free from Marco's grip and rushed to his side, taking his hand. "I'm here. I'm right here." "Sorry, promised I'd come back. Didn't specify in what condition." "Don't joke, not now." "Not joking, just trying not to scream while the good doctor digs around in my shoulder." Doctor. Ricci was indeed probing the wound, extracting the bullet with practiced efficiency. Luca's grip on Arya's hand tightened to the point of pain, but he didn't make a sound. "Shoulders clean," Dr. Ricci announced. "Ribs just grazed. You're lucky. Another inch, and you'd have a collapsed lung." "Luck," Luca muttered. "Right." The doctor began stitching, his movements quick and precise. Arya watched, unable to look away from the needle pulling flesh together, sealing the wound. This was real. Not a movie, not a story. Real blood, real pain, real possibility of loss. When Dr. Ricci finally finished and began bandaging, Arya let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "He'll need rest," the doctor said, washing his hands. "Absolute rest. No stress, no exertion. And someone needs to watch him for signs of infection." "I will," Arya said immediately. Luca tried to sit up and immediately regretted it, gasping in pain. "The Russos handled," Marco said, appearing with a tablet. "We took their warehouse, captured 18 of their people. Russo himself is dead. Took a bullet trying to escape. Dead." Luca processed this. "Good. The others?" "Waiting for your orders." "Let them go." Marco blinked. "Boss?" "Let them go. With a message. The war is over. The Russos are finished. Anyone who wants to challenge me next can look at what happened to them and ask themselves if it's worth it." "That's surprisingly merciful." "I'm tired of bloodshed." Luca's eyes found Arya again. "Tired of risking what matters for territory and pride." Marco looked between them, understanding dawning. "I'll handle it." When they were alone, Dr. Ricci had left strict instructions and a bottle of pain medication. Arya helped Luca to the bedroom. He moved slowly, every step clearly agony, but he refused to be carried. "Stubborn man," she muttered. "It's part of my charm." "You got shot. There's nothing charming about that." "I've been shot before." "That doesn't make me feel better." Luca eased himself onto the bed with a pained grunt. "I know. I'm sorry. I knew the ambush was possible. Should have been more careful." "You should have sent someone else." "I couldn't. This was personal. The Russos came after what's mine. I had to respond personally." Arya sat beside him, careful not to jostle his injuries. "What's yours?" she repeated softly. "You mean me?" "Yes." No hesitation? No equivocation. Just simple truth. She touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw, feeling the stubble rough against her palm. "You almost died tonight." "But I didn't." "You could have." "Arya, no, let me say this." She took a shaky breath. "When Marco said you'd been shot, I felt like someone had ripped my heart out. And I realized that somewhere between that first night and now, you stopped being the dangerous stranger who saved me. You became more." Luca's good hand came up to cover hers. "More?" "Everything," she whispered. "You became everything." The admission hung between them, fragile and powerful. Luca pulled her down gently until her head rested on his uninjured shoulder. "I love you," he said quietly. "I've been trying not to. Trying to keep distance, maintain control. But I can't. I love you, Arya Bennett, and that terrifies me more than any bullet." Tears spilled down Arya's cheeks. "I love you too. Even though you're insane and dangerous and apparently can't stay out of the line of fire." "That last part wasn't my fault." "It's never your fault." They lay there in the darkness, holding each other, while the city sprawled endlessly beyond the windows. Two people who'd found each other in the midst of chaos, forging something real from violence and consequence. "What happens now?" Arya asked eventually. "Now I heal, and then I rebuild, stronger, smarter." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "With you beside me, if you'll have me." "As what? Your employee? Your girlfriend? Your—" "Partner," Luca interrupted. "In all things. I told you before. You have good instincts, intelligence, courage. I want you working with me, not just for me. Building something that lasts." Arya lifted her head to look at him. "You're serious." "Completely. The hotel is just the start. I have other businesses, legitimate ones, that need people I can trust. People who understand both sides of what I do." His eyes were intense despite the pain and exhaustion. "I'm trying to go legitimate, Arya. Has been the plan for years. Clean money, legal operations, but it's a slow process, delicate. I need people who can navigate both worlds. And you think I can do that?" "I know you can. You've already proven it." He touched her face. "But I won't force this on you. If you want the quiet life, the cafe you dreamed about, far from all this, I'll make it happen. No obligations, no strings. Arya considered. The cafe had been a fantasy, a someday dream that kept her going through endless shifts and mounting bills. But it had always felt distant, unattainable. This, what Luca was offering, felt real, solid, possible. I want both, she said finally. I want to work with you, learn from you, build something meaningful. But one day, when things are stable, I want that cafe too. Maybe not as an escape, but as a piece of normalcy, a reminder of where I came from. Luca smiled, genuine and warm. Done. We'll make it happen. Together. Together, Arya echoed. She kissed him carefully, mindful of his injuries, and felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This was where she was meant to be. Not safe, not predictable, but alive and present and fighting for something that mattered. Outside, dawn was breaking again, a new day, a new beginning, and for the first time in her life, Arya Bennett wasn't just surviving, she was living. The days following Luca's injury passed in a strange rhythm of domesticity and danger. Arya stayed by his side, changing his bandages, forcing him to take his medication, and physically blocking him from his laptop when Dr. Ricci's strict orders about rest were being ignored. You're worse than my mother, Luca grumbled on the third day, trying to reach around her for his phone. Your mother sounds like a smart woman, Arya shot back, moving the device further away. And you're not healed enough to be making decisions about territorial disputes. It's a simple warehouse allocation issue that Marco is perfectly capable of handling. She crossed her arms. You were shot 5 days ago. You need to rest. I've rested enough. The hole in your shoulder says otherwise. They stared at each other, locked in a battle of wills. Finally, Luca's lips twitched with amusement. You're enjoying this. Watching you squirm? Absolutely. Arya softened, moving closer to brush a strand of hair from his forehead. I'm also terrified you'll tear your stitches and end up bleeding all over your expensive furniture again. It's leather. It wipes clean. Luca. Fine. He captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I'll behave, for now. Thank you. But behaving wasn't in Luca's nature. By the end of the week, he was conducting business from the bedroom, his laptop propped on his knees, phone constantly ringing with updates and requests. Arya gave up trying to enforce complete rest and instead focused on damage control, making sure he ate, monitoring his pain levels, and chasing out anyone who stayed longer than 30 minutes. Marco found the whole situation hilarious. Never thought I'd see the day, he said, leaning against the doorframe while Arya bullied Luca into eating soup. Luca Moretti, feared by half the city, brought to heel by a woman with a bowl of chicken broth. It's minestrone, Arya corrected, and I'm not bringing him to heel. I'm keeping him alive. Same thing in my book. Luca glared at them both, but ate the soup without further complaint. The truth was, beneath the bickering and forced rest, something fundamental was shifting between them. The near-death experience had stripped away pretense, leaving raw honesty in its wake. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. Luca told her about growing up in Naples, about his father's death when he was 16, about the choices that had led him down this path. Arya shared her own history, the parade of foster homes, the loneliness that had shaped her, the dreams she'd buried to survive. I used to think I'd be dead by 30, Luca admitted one night, his voice quiet in the darkness. In this life, that's the expected lifespan. You burn bright and fast, and then someone faster or smarter or luckier takes you out. Arya's fingers traced lazy patterns on his chest, careful of the bandages. What changed? You. He caught her hand, stilling it. Suddenly, I have a reason to think about 40, 50. Growing old. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person. I know, but it's the truth. He turned his head to look at her, his eyes reflecting the city lights beyond the window. You make me want things I thought I'd given up on. A future. A family. Peace. Can you have those things in your world? I'm going to try. His voice held steel beneath the softness. The legitimate businesses aren't just a cover, Arya. They're an exit strategy. Another 5 years, maybe 10, and I can walk away from the rest. Leave it to the next generation. Build something clean. And the people who won't let you walk away? That's what the next few years are for. Consolidating power, making the cost of challenging me too high, ensuring that when I do step back, no one will dare fill the vacuum with chaos. He paused. I'm tired of war, tired of looking over my shoulder. I want what normal people have. Quiet nights, lazy mornings, arguments about whose turn it is to make coffee. Arya smiled despite herself. That sounds nice. It does, doesn't it? They drifted into comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when two people are truly at ease with each other. But peace never lasted long in Luca's world. The call came at 2 a.m, 10 days after the shooting. Arya jerked awake at the sound of Luca's phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. He answered with a rough, "What?" then went very still. "When? How?" "No, don't touch anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He was already moving, ignoring Arya's protests about his injuries. "What happened?" she demanded. "The Castellano, their son, Antonio, was found dead an hour ago, single gunshot to the head." Luca was pulling on clothes with mechanical efficiency. "They're saying I did it." Arya's blood ran cold. "Did you?" He turned to look at her, and she saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. "No, we have a ceasefire, an agreement. I would never break that without cause." "Then who?" "That's what I need to find out, before this spirals into another war." "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." Luca, "No, Arya. This is too dangerous. If the Castellano think I killed their heir, they won't be rational. They'll be out for blood." He crossed to her, cupping her face in his hands. "I need you here. Safe. Please." The please broke her resistance. She nodded reluctantly. "Be careful. Always." He kissed her hard and fast, then was gone. Marco already waiting by the elevator. Arya paced the penthouse for 3 hours, her imagination conjuring increasingly horrific scenarios. When her phone finally rang, she lunged for it. "He's okay," Marco said before she could ask. "But we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The kind where someone's trying to start a war between us and the Castellano. Antonio wasn't killed by our people. The bullet doesn't match any of our weapons. The angle's wrong. Everything about it screams professional hit designed to look like an execution." "Who would do that?" "That's the million-dollar question." Marco's voice was grim. "Luca's meeting with Salvatore Castellano in an hour. Neutral ground. If he can convince them we weren't involved, we might avoid bloodshed. If not, people die. A lot of people." The line went dead. Arya couldn't stay still. She showered, dressed, made coffee she didn't drink. The security team watched her with patient wariness, probably under orders to restrain her if she tried to leave. She considered it anyway. 4 hours later, Luca returned. He looked exhausted, but unharmed. "It's contained, for now." "What happened?" Luca sank onto the couch with a pained grunt. His shoulder was clearly bothering him. "Salvatore didn't believe me at first. Took some convincing, but he's smart enough to know that if I wanted his son dead, I wouldn't have done it in a way that pointed directly back to me. So he believes someone's trying to frame you." "Yes, which means we have a common enemy." Luca accepted the water Arya brought him with a grateful nod. "We're pooling resources, sharing intelligence. Whoever did this made a tactical error. They united two families instead of dividing them." "Do you have any idea who it could be?" "A few suspects, smaller operations that would benefit from us tearing each other apart. Maybe remnants of the Russo family looking for revenge." He rubbed his eyes. "Marco's running down leads. We'll find them. And then? Then we make sure they never try this again." The threat hung in the air, cold and final. Arya should have been horrified, should have recoiled from the casual promise of violence. Instead, she understood. This was survival. This was the world Luca inhabited, where mercy could be mistaken for weakness, and weakness meant death. "I want to help," she said. Luca looked at her sharply. "Help how?" "You said I have good instincts. Let me prove it. Let me look at the evidence, the intelligence. Maybe I'll see something your people missed." "Arya, this isn't—" "I'm already in this, Luca. I have been since that first night. Hiding me away doesn't change that. But maybe I can actually contribute something instead of just waiting and worrying." He studied her for a long moment. Then to her surprise, he nodded. Okay, but you work here from the penthouse, and only on information analysis. No field work. No direct contact with suspects. Agreed. That's how Arya found herself sitting at Luca's dining table the next morning, surrounded by files, photographs, and intelligence reports. Marco had been skeptical at first, but he'd provided everything she requested. Background on the smaller families, financial records, known associates of the Russos, security footage from the night Antonio was killed. She worked methodically, the same way she used to balance books at her waitressing jobs, finding patterns in chaos. Hours passed. Coffee grew cold. Her eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets and surveillance photos. Then she saw it, a detail so small it was almost invisible. In the financial records of a low-level crew called the Ferretti family, there was a payment, $50,000, made 2 days before Antonio's death. The notation said consulting fees, but the timing was too perfect, and the account it went to was registered to a shell company based in the Cayman Islands. "Marco," she called out. He appeared instantly, always hovering nearby when she was working. "Find something?" "Maybe. This payment here, can you trace where the money went after hitting the shell company?" Marco leaned over her shoulder, scanning the document. His eyes narrowed. "That's actually a good catch. Our people didn't flag this because the amount was relatively small, but the timing is suspicious. Very." He pulled out his phone, making a call in rapid Italian. When he hung up, he was smiling. "I've got our forensic accountant on it. If there's a trail, he'll find it." 3 hours later, they had their answer. The money had been funneled through 3 additional shell companies before ending up in the account of a known contract killer, a man with ties to organized crime across the eastern seaboard. "The Ferretti family hired the hit," Marco said, laying out the evidence for Luca when he arrived that evening. "They wanted to trigger a war between us and the Castellano, then move in while we were distracted. Classic power play." Luca's expression was carved from ice as he reviewed the documents. "How did we miss this?" The payments were broken up, disguised as legitimate expenses. It was designed to stay under the radar. Marco glanced at Arya. She found the thread, pulled it until the whole thing unraveled. Luca looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. Pride, maybe? Or concern. "Good work!" "What happens now?" Arya asked. "Now I share this with Salvatore. Then we pay the Ferretti family a visit." "Luca, they killed his son, Arya. And they tried to start a war that would have cost hundreds of lives. There has to be a reckoning." She knew he was right, knew that in his world this kind of betrayal demanded blood, but knowing it and accepting it were different things. "Just try not to get shot again," she said quietly. His smile was brief but genuine. "I'll do my best." The meeting with the Ferretti family happened at midnight in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Brooklyn. Arya knew this because she'd insisted on being kept informed, even if she couldn't be there. Marco sent her periodic updates, terse, coded messages that told her nothing and everything. Target located. Negotiations in progress. Situation contained. Each message ratcheted her tension higher. She tried to distract herself with work, with television, with anything. Nothing helped. She was staring at the city lights, her reflection ghost-like in the glass, when her phone rang. "It's done," Luca said without preamble. "Are you hurt?" "No, but the Ferretti family won't be a problem anymore." Arya closed her eyes, not wanting to know the details. "And Salvatore?" "Satisfied. Justice was served. The alliance holds." "So it's really over." "This chapter, yes." She heard exhaustion in his voice, bone deep and soul heavy. "I'm coming home." Home. When had the penthouse become home? When had Luca's presence become the thing that made a place safe? He arrived 40 minutes later, looking worn but unbloodied. Arya met him at the elevator, and he pulled her into his arms without a word, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. "I'm tired," he murmured into her hair. "So tired of this." "Then stop." "I can't. Not yet. There are still too many loose threads, too many people depending on me." He pulled back to look at her. "But soon. I promise. Soon I'll have built something stable enough that I can step back. And when I do, I want you beside me. I'm not going anywhere. Even after seeing what my life really entails, The violence, the moral compromises, the constant danger? Arya touched his face, feeling the stubble rough against her palm, the warmth of his skin. Especially after seeing all that. Because I also see what you're building. The legitimate businesses employing thousands of people. The neighborhoods you protect. The families you help. It's not black and white, Luca. Nothing is. You're too good for this world. No, I'm exactly right for it. Because I see both sides, the darkness and the light, and I choose to help you build toward the light. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, as if trying to convince himself she was real. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. There's something I need to do, he said. Something I should have done weeks ago. What? Luca stepped back and, to her utter shock, dropped to one knee. What are you doing? Arya's voice came out as a squeak. Something traditional, old-fashioned, probably completely insane given the circumstances. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Arya Bennett, you saved my life. Then you stayed when anyone sane would have run. You've seen me at my worst, bloodied, violent, making choices that haunt me, and you didn't flinch. You made me believe in futures I'd given up on, in possibilities I thought were lost. He opened the box, revealing a ring, elegant, timeless, with a single diamond that caught the light like captured starfire. I'm not promising you an easy life. I can't. But I'm promising you all of me. Every broken piece, every scar, every hope. Marry me. Build this future with me. Help me become the man I want to be instead of the one I've had to be. Tears streamed down Arya's face. This wasn't how she'd imagined a proposal. At midnight in a penthouse, from a man who'd just returned from dispensing violent justice. It should have been wrong. Should have been tainted by the darkness that shadowed his world. Instead, it felt perfect. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Luca surged to his feet, too quickly, given his healing shoulder, and kissed her with a passion that made the world spin. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. I love you, he said against her lips. More than I thought myself capable of loving anyone. I love you too. All of you. The darkness and the light. They held each other as the city sprawled endlessly beyond the windows, two souls who'd found each other in the midst of chaos and chosen to build something lasting from the wreckage. The next morning, Arya woke to find the bed empty. Panic flared before she heard sounds from the kitchen, the clink of dishes, the hiss of the espresso machine. She patted out in one of Luca's shirts to find him making breakfast, moving carefully to protect his still healing shoulder. You're supposed to be resting, she said. I'm making my fiancé breakfast. That's allowed. Fiancé. The word sent a thrill through her. He set a perfect cappuccino in front of her, the foam artfully designed into a heart. I called my mother this morning, told her the news. Arya's eyes widened. And? She wants to meet you, today if possible, tomorrow at the latest. He grimaced. I tried to buy us more time, but she's insistent. Says any woman brave enough to marry me needs to be vetted immediately. Should I be terrified? Absolutely, but for what it's worth, she sounds pleased. Apparently, she'd given up hope of me settling down. Smart woman. Terrifying woman, Luca corrected. But you'll love her. Everyone does, eventually. They met Isabella Moretti for lunch at a restaurant in Little Italy, family-owned, discreet, where Luca was greeted like royalty. His mother was already seated when they arrived, a striking woman in her early 60s with silver-streaked dark hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. She stood as they approached, and Arya felt herself being evaluated in a single sweeping glance. Mama, Luca said, kissing both her cheeks. This is Arya. Isabella's eyes softened fractionally. The one who saved my son's life. I just reacted, Arya said. Anyone would have... No, not anyone. Most would have looked away, pretended not to see. Self-preservation is a powerful instinct. Isabella gestured for them to sit. You acted when you could have walked away. That tells me who you are. Over the next 2 hours, Isabella gently but thoroughly interrogated Arya. About her background, her work, her intentions, her understanding of what marrying Luca truly meant. Some questions were subtle, others direct to the point of uncomfortable. But beneath it all, Arya sensed genuine concern. a mother trying to protect her son while also welcoming someone new into the family. You understand he's trying to go legitimate, Isabella said over dessert, that he wants to leave the darkness behind. I do. And you're prepared to help him, to be the anchor that keeps him from sliding back when things get difficult? Arya met those sharp eyes without flinching. I'm prepared to stand beside him, whatever that requires. Isabella studied her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, she smiled. Good. He needs someone strong, someone who won't break under pressure. She reached across the table, taking Arya's hand. Welcome to the family, Kara. It's small, but fierce. And now it includes you. The acceptance brought unexpected tears to Arya's eyes. She'd never had a family. Never had someone look at her and say, "You belong here." The weight of it was overwhelming. Luca's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. After lunch, as they walked back to the car, Isabella pulled Arya aside while Luca spoke with the restaurant owner. I need you to understand something, she said quietly. My son has done terrible things. Things that haunt him, even if he doesn't show it. He carries scars, not just the physical ones, that may never fully heal. Her eyes were kind but unwavering. Loving him means accepting all of that. The guilt, the nightmares, the moments when the past comes crashing back. I know, Arya said. Do you? Really? I grew up with scars too. Different kinds, but just as deep. I understand what it means to carry darkness, and I also understand that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing someone, scars and all, and committing to face whatever comes together. Isabella's smile was approving. You really are perfect for him. That night, lying in bed with Luca's arm draped carefully around her, Arya stared at the ring on her finger. Your mother's incredible, she said. Told you. Terrifying. In the best way. Luca chuckled, then sobered. There's one more thing I need to tell you. About my plans. About the future. Arya turned to face him. I'm listening. I've been working on an exit strategy for 5 years. Slowly transitioning assets, building legitimate revenue streams, putting distance between myself and the criminal enterprises. In 2 years, maybe 3, I'll have enough separation that I can make a clean break without leaving a power vacuum. And then? Then I walk away, completely. The hotels, the real estate, the import businesses, those stay. Everything else gets handed off to people I trust, people who can maintain the balance without me. He paused. I want to build a normal life, Arya. Maybe not completely normal, too much history for that, but something close. Something where our children don't have to grow up looking over their shoulders. Children. The word made her heart skip. If you want them. If not, that's okay too. I just want a future where the biggest crisis is a broken dishwasher, not a rival family trying to kill me. Arya laughed, the sound slightly watery. That sounds perfect. 2 years, Luca said. Can you wait 2 years? I've waited my whole life to find something worth holding on to. 2 more years is nothing. He kissed her, slow and sweet, a promise of all the tomorrows to come. Outside, the city glittered, beautiful and brutal, full of danger and possibility. But inside, wrapped in each other's arms, they'd found something precious, something worth fighting for, and fight they would, together, until the darkness finally gave way to light. The months that followed were a study in contrasts, building toward legitimacy while navigating the treacherous currents of Luca's world. Arya threw herself into the work with fierce determination, learning the intricacies of his business empire. She spent mornings at the hotel in Tribeca, afternoons reviewing real estate portfolios, evenings studying financial reports that documented the slow, careful transition from shadow to light. She was good at it, better than good. Her years of survival had taught her to read between lines, to spot inconsistencies, to understand the unspoken tensions that governed human behavior. In boardrooms and negotiation meetings, she became Luca's secret weapon, the one who could smile and ask innocent questions that exposed lies, who could offer suggestions that seemed simple but shifted entire strategies. You have a gift for this, Marco told her one afternoon as they reviewed a problematic acquisition. Luca's father would have loved you. I wish I could have met him. He was a hard man. Fair, but hard. Believed that respect was earned through action, not words. Marco's expression turned distant. He built this empire from nothing, started as a dock worker and ended up controlling half the shipping in the Northeast. But it cost him, cost all of us. Is that why Luca wants out? Because he saw what it did to his father? Partly, but mostly because he's smarter than his father was. He sees that the old ways are dying, that the future belongs to people who can operate in both worlds, legitimate and otherwise, until they don't need the shadows anymore. Arya understood that better now. The transition wasn't simple or clean. It required maintaining relationships with dangerous people while simultaneously building distance from them. It meant making compromises that left her awake some nights, staring at the ceiling and questioning whether the ends justified the means. But then she'd feel Luca's arm tighten around her in his sleep, hear him murmur her name, and remember why she was doing this. For him, for them, for the future they were building together. The wedding planning became an unexpected refuge. Isabella took charge with the kind of military precision that made five-star generals look disorganized. She and Arya spent hours selecting venues, sampling cakes, debating flower arrangements. It was normal in a way nothing else in Arya's life had ever been, frustrating and joyful and utterly mundane. "My son wants small and private," Isabella said over champagne one afternoon, reviewing guest lists. "But in our world, small is still 200 people. Everyone who matters needs to be there. It's politics as much as celebration." "I understand. Do you mind? Some brides want intimacy, just family and close friends." Arya considered this. 6 months ago, she would have had no one to invite. Now she had Isabella, Marco, the staff from the hotel, who'd become something like friends, and Luca's extended network of allies and associates. It wasn't the family she'd been born to, but it was the one she'd chosen. "I want whatever shows the world that I'm proud to be marrying him," she said finally, "that I'm not hiding or ashamed. 200 people is fine." Isabella's smile was approving. "You're stronger than you look, Kara. I've had to be." The engagement wasn't without its challenges. There were people in Luca's world who saw Arya as a weakness, a soft spot that could be exploited. She received threatening letters, found her car vandalized twice, and once had to be physically pulled back by security when someone tried to grab her outside the hotel. After that incident, Luca tripled her protection detail. "This is insane," Arya protested, looking at the 4 bodyguards now assigned to her. "I can't live like this." "You can and you will," Luca said, his voice allowing no argument. "Not forever. Just until we're clear of the transition. Once I'm fully legitimate, once the old ties are severed, you won't need this level of security." "When will that be?" "Soon." But his eyes held doubt, as if he wasn't entirely sure himself. The doubt proved prescient. 9 months into their engagement, the careful peace Luca had built began to fracture. A new player emerged, someone operating outside the traditional family structures, running drugs and weapons with brutal efficiency. They called themselves the Syndicate, and they had no interest in the old rules or the old alliances. "They're young," Marco explained during an emergency meeting at the Connecticut estate. "Most of them in their 20s, no respect for tradition, no understanding of how the balance works. And they want my territory," Luca said, studying surveillance photos spread across the table. "They want everyone's territory. They've already pushed out 3 smaller families in Queens, hit 2 of Castellano's operations. Now they're looking at your holdings." Arya watched Luca's expression harden. This was what he'd been trying to avoid. One more war, one more threat pulling him back into the darkness just as he was trying to step toward the light. "What are my options?" he asked. "Fight, negotiate, or cede ground and consolidate elsewhere?" "Ceding ground shows weakness. They'll just take more." Fighting could trigger exactly the kind of instability you've been trying to avoid. The other families are watching. They're waiting to see how you handle this. Luca rubbed his eyes, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "Set up a meeting. Neutral ground. I'll talk to them first. See if reason works before resorting to force. And if reason doesn't work, then we do what's necessary." Arya waited until Marco left before speaking. "You can't keep doing this." "I know. Every time you think you're out, something pulls you back in." "I know." He turned to look at her, and she saw the frustration and weariness there. "I'm trying, Arya. I'm trying to build something clean, but the old world won't let go easily." "Then maybe you need to cut ties faster, more completely. If I move too quickly, I create a power vacuum. Other people, worse people, will fill it. At least while I'm still involved, I can maintain some control, some order. At what cost? Your health, your safety, our future? Luca crossed to her, taking her hands in his. I made a promise to you, 2 years, 3 at most. I intend to keep that promise. But right now I need to handle this threat, neutralize it. Then we can move forward. Arya wanted to argue, to demand he walk away immediately and let the chips fall where they may. But she understood the truth he wasn't saying. People depended on him. Legitimate employees at his hotels and restaurants, families he protected in neighborhoods that would descend into chaos without his stabilizing influence. Walking away meant abandoning them. Okay, she said quietly. Handle it. But Luca, be careful. Don't let this pull you all the way back. I won't, I promise. The meeting with the syndicate happened 3 days later at a warehouse in Red Hook. Arya insisted on going despite Luca's vehement protests. I need to see this, she said. I need to understand what we're dealing with. It's too dangerous. I'll stay in the car with Marco, full security, but I'm coming. Something in her tone must have convinced him because he finally nodded. In the car. You don't get out no matter what happens. The warehouse was exactly what Arya expected, concrete and shadows, the kind of place where violence felt inevitable. She watched from the SUV as Luca approached with 2 of his men, meeting a group of younger men who radiated aggressive confidence. Their leader was a man who couldn't have been older than 25, with cold eyes and an easy smile that didn't reach them. Marco had identified him as Vincent Shaw, former military, dishonorably discharged, now running the syndicate with ruthless efficiency. Arya couldn't hear the conversation, but she could read body language. Luca, controlled and authoritative. Vincent, dismissive and mocking. The tension ratcheting higher with each exchange. Then Vincent said something that made Luca go very still. This isn't good, Marco muttered beside her. What did he say? I can't tell, but look at Luca's hands. Arya looked. Luca's hands were clenched into fists, his whole body radiating barely controlled rage. Whatever Vincent had said, it had cut deep. The meeting ended abruptly. Luca turned and walked back to the SUV, his expression carved from ice. He got in without a word, and Marco immediately drove away. What happened? Arya asked. Luca's jaw worked. He threatened you. Said that marrying me made you a legitimate target. That if I didn't hand over my waterfront properties, you'd be the first casualty of the war. Arya's blood ran cold. He can't. He can. And he will if I don't give him what he wants. Luca's voice was flat, emotionless, the tone he used when his feelings were too big to safely express. He's escalating, trying to force my hand. What are you going to do? What I have to do. That night, Luca called together every ally he had. The Castellano family, the remnants of the old guard, even a few legitimate business owners who understood that the syndicate represented chaos that would harm everyone. He laid out his case simply. The syndicate threatened the careful balance that kept the city functioning. They needed to be stopped before their aggression spiraled into open war. The response was unanimous. They would stand with him. What followed was 3 weeks of careful, brutal strategy. Not open warfare, but calculated strikes, disrupting supply chains, freezing assets, applying pressure through legitimate channels where possible and illegitimate ones where necessary. The syndicate pushed back hard, leading to several violent confrontations that left people on both sides dead or hospitalized. Arya watched it unfold from the safety of the estate, her security detail now numbering 6. She continued working, continued planning the wedding, continued maintaining the appearance of normalcy even as the world burned around them. But inside, she was terrified that Luca would be the next casualty, that Vincent's threat would become reality, that everything they'd built would crumble. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. Arya was reviewing contracts when Marco burst into the office, his face ashen. They took him! Her heart stopped. What? Luca. He went to check on one of the restaurants. The syndicate ambushed his car, took him. The room spun. Is he alive? They sent proof of life 20 minutes ago. They're demanding we surrender all waterfront operations by midnight or they'll kill him. Arya was on her feet, moving before conscious thought caught up. Where? Where are they holding him? We don't know. They're smart. kept the video background neutral. Could be anywhere in the city. Then find them. Her voice came out as a scream. Use every resource, every contact, every... We are, Marco said, gripping her shoulders. Every person we have is looking, but Arya, you need to prepare yourself. If we can't find him in time... No. The word was absolute. We'll find him. We have to. She spent the next hours in a haze of terror and fury. Marco coordinated the search from the estate, dozens of calls going out to informants and allies. Salvatore Castellano contributed his own resources, as angry about the kidnapping as anyone. It violated every code, crossed every line. 6 hours before the deadline, they got a break. A low-level member of the syndicate, arrested on an unrelated charge, offered information in exchange for leniency. He didn't know exactly where Luca was being held, but he'd heard mentions of an abandoned factory in Staten Island. It was enough. Marco assembled a team, 20 of their best people, plus a dozen of Castellanos. Arya demanded to go and was predictably refused. You stay here where it's safe, Marco said. When we bring him back, he'll need you whole and healthy, not caught in the crossfire. I can't just sit here. Yes, you can. And you will, because that's what he'd want. So she waited. Again, pacing the same floor she'd paced a year ago, terrified for the same man, praying to forces she didn't believe in that he'd come home alive. The call came 90 minutes later. We have him, Marco said, his voice tight with emotion. He's hurt, but alive. We're bringing him home. Arya's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, clutching the phone, tears streaming down her face. How bad? Bad enough. Dr. Ricci is meeting us at the house. Just be ready. When they arrived, Arya was waiting by the door. She watched them carry Luca inside, and her stomach lurched. He was conscious, but barely. His face bruised and swollen, his movement suggesting broken ribs, possibly worse. There was blood, too much blood, and the haunted look in his eyes said the damage went deeper than physical. Dining table, Dr. Ricci commanded, and they repeated the horrific ritual from months before. This time was worse. The injuries more severe, broken ribs, a fractured wrist, lacerations that required dozens of stitches. And throughout it all, Luca remained eerily quiet, his eyes distant. When Dr. Ricci finally finished and left them alone, Arya climbed carefully onto the table beside him. Hey, she whispered. He turned his head slowly. Hey. You scared me. I know. I'm sorry. What did they do to you? Nothing I haven't survived before. But his voice was hollow, and she knew he was lying, or at least not telling the whole truth. Luca, they're gone, he said abruptly. Vincent and his inner circle. Marco and Castellano's people. They made sure of it. The syndicate is finished. Arya absorbed this. More deaths. More violence. More blood on hands that were trying so hard to be clean. At what cost? She asked quietly. Luca's laugh was bitter. Everything. This cost everything. He finally looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw tears tracking through the blood and dirt on his face. I can't do this anymore, Arya. I can't keep fighting, can't keep losing pieces of myself to this world. I'm done. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm out, completely, today, now. He struggled to sit up, wincing with pain. I'll hand everything off to Marco and Castellano. Let them divide it however they want. Keep the legitimate businesses and walk away from the rest. But you said, the power vacuum, the instability, I don't care anymore. Let someone else maintain the balance. Let someone else sacrifice their soul for order. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. I'm choosing to actually have the future we keep talking about instead of perpetually preparing for it. Arya's heart was hammering. Are you sure? Really sure? Because once you make this choice, there's no going back. I know. He took her hand, his grip weak but determined. I should have done this months ago. Should have cut ties the moment I asked you to marry me. But I was afraid. Afraid of what would happen, who would get hurt, how it would all fall apart. But today, sitting in that factory thinking I might never see you again, I realized something. What? That the only thing that matters is you, us. Everything else, the territory, the power, the legacy, it's all meaningless if I'm not alive to share it with you. Arya was crying openly now. I love you. I love you too, more than anything, more than this life. He pressed his forehead to hers, both of them shaking. Marry me. Tomorrow. Today, if we can manage it. I don't want to wait anymore. You can barely stand. Then we'll do it sitting down. I don't care. I just want to make you my wife before anything else can go wrong. Arya laughed through her tears. Okay. Yes. Whenever, wherever. I'm yours. They called Isabella, who managed to arrange everything with stunning efficiency. 3 days later, enough time for Luca's swelling to go down and his mobility to improve, they were married in a small chapel in Connecticut with only 20 people in attendance. Isabella, Marco, Dr. Ricci, and a handful of others who'd proven their loyalty. Arya wore a simple white dress that Isabella had somehow produced overnight. Luca wore a dark suit, moving stiffly but standing tall. When he said his vows, promising to love her, protect her, build a life worthy of her sacrifice, his voice was steady and clear. I was dead before I met you, he said, deviating from the traditional words. Going through the motions, playing a role, waiting for the bullet with my name on it. You gave me a reason to live, a reason to fight for something better. I promised to spend every day of the rest of my life earning that gift. Arya's vows were simpler. I choose you, every day, in every way, for as long as we both live. When they kissed, sealing the promise, applause erupted from their small audience. Isabella was crying openly. Marco was suspiciously misty-eyed. Even Dr. Ricci looked moved. The reception was held at the estate. Nothing elaborate, just good food, better wine, and people who genuinely cared about their happiness. It was perfect in its simplicity. Late that night, alone in their bedroom, Luca held Arya close. No regrets? He asked. Not a single one. Even though you married a man with more baggage than any person should have to carry? I married the man I love. The baggage comes with the territory. She traced the line of his jaw. Besides, I have plenty of my own baggage. We'll just have to help each other carry it. Deal. They made love carefully, mindful of his injuries, and it felt like a new beginning, a fresh start, the first night of the rest of their lives. The transition out of the criminal world took 6 months to fully complete. Luca handed off his remaining shadow operations to Marco and Salvatore, keeping only the legitimate businesses. There were tense moments, negotiations that could have gone wrong, threats from people who didn't want to see him leave. But with Arya beside him and his allies backing him, he made it work. By the time their first anniversary approached, Luca Moretti was, on paper and in practice, a legitimate businessman. He owned hotels, restaurants, and real estate holdings. He employed hundreds of people in legal, above-board operations. The shadows of his past remained, but they no longer controlled his present. Arya had flourished in ways she'd never imagined. She now managed 3 of his hotels, with plans to open a 4th, and tucked away in a corner of the Tribeca property was a small cafe, not yet open, but coming together piece by piece. Her dream, finally within reach. Next month, she told Luca, showing him the designs. We'll have the grand opening next month. What are you going to call it? She touched the locket at her throat, the one he'd returned to her that night that changed everything. Bennett's. After my mother. A piece of my past in our future. Luca pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. She would have been proud of you. I hope so. They stood together in the empty cafe space, surrounded by paint samples and furniture catalogs, planning a future that felt impossibly bright. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, beautiful and brutal, full of danger and possibility. But they'd found their place in it, not in the shadows or the spotlight, but somewhere in between. Building something real from the ashes of chaos, living instead of merely surviving. What are you thinking? Luca asked. Arya smiled, her hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach where a new life was just beginning, though she hadn't told him yet. Soon. She'd tell him soon, when the moment was right. I'm thinking about how one moment changed everything. One choice made without thinking, one impulse that felt reckless and terrifying and absolutely necessary. Pulling me away from that car. Yes, if I'd walked away that night, if I'd minded my own business and caught my train home, my life would be completely different. Do you ever wonder what would have happened? If you'd made the other choice? Arya considered this. That version of her life felt like a ghost story now. The endless struggle, the crushing loneliness, the quiet desperation of surviving without living. She'd probably still be waitressing at Marcello's, still drowning in bills, still invisible. No, she said finally, I don't wonder. Because this, right here, right now, with you, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Every choice, every consequence, every moment of fear and hope and love led me here. And I wouldn't change a single second. Luca turned her to face him, his eyes, those dark, intense eyes that had first captured her in the midst of chaos, soft with emotion. Neither would I. You saved my life that night, Arya. But more than that, you gave me a reason to live it. They kissed as the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, painting everything in shades of gold. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. The journey hadn't been easy, the costs had been high, but they'd survived, they'd fought, they'd built something lasting from impossible circumstances. And now, standing in a cafe that represented dreams and second chances, with a future full of possibilities stretching before them, Arya Bennett Moretti finally understood what it meant to be truly, completely alive. She'd saved a stranger's life on a rain-soaked Manhattan street, and in doing so, she'd saved her own. The city glittered beyond the windows, endless and unforgiving, full of stories yet to be written. But this story, their story, had found its ending. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and hard-won, and absolutely theirs. And that was enough. That was everything.